Hello, class. Today is Thursday, so we are going to do a lab together. This is the oil spill cleanup lab. So we're actually going backwards in our Ultimate Science notebooks because didn't anticipate that the coronavirus would happen. So it's actually after the animal section, and it's on a page that looks like this. So if this is our ecosystems PBL, our ecosystems cootie catcher, which we should have used. If we haven't, feel free to make your own cootie catchers at home. Pass this rubric, and now we're here. So you should be on a page that says an oil spill clean up, and it has like a giant iceberg here and a table and a bunch of stuff like that. So that's where we are in our Ultimate Science notebook. I will also be posting the sheets that go along with this, as well as projecting it in a second. So do not panic if you don't have your book at home. Okay, so the first thing I want you to do is to read this by yourself, read this with me, or Coral read this with me. So you can either follow along with your pencil, you can read it with me, or you can skip ahead and just read this quietly to yourself. So an oil spill cleanup. Oil is a very important source of energy. However, a lot of that oil comes from the ocean. When oil comes from the ocean, it can often lead to oil spills, adding more than 300 gallons to the environment each year. How do we clean it up? All these oil spills can harm local life, like fish and sea creatures. It also affects the organisms that eat those aquatic organisms, like seagulls and even humans. Local fishing and housing industries are affected too. These oil spills can be expensive to clean up. Oil doesn't mix with water. You might think that it would make it easier to identify and clean up, but even though we can find it, the fact is that it's nonpolar, makes it difficult to scoop and clean up. Let's see what it's like to clean up an oil spill on a small space. So, let's do this together. Want to say once again, you are not required to do any science experiments at home, period. End of discussion. Never, ever, ever. I'm going to walk you through the two options you have for today, and you can make a personal choice with your family which one you think is going to work best for you. The first way I'm going to walk you through it is if you want to do this yourself at home. The second way I'm going to walk you through it is with me doing it and you following along and doing the math and things like that at home. So if you want to do this at home, you do not have to. You do not have to. You do not have to. My first recommendation is to get all the supplies you need. So you're going to notice here, sorry, I'm skipping ahead for a second, that there's this table, right? I'm slightly shifting what these things are just because we have a lack of resources right now, right? So hang on, I forgot a cup. So to do this lab, the first thing you need is parent permission. We are in a time in our society where resources are kind of limited, so make sure that you ask before you take anything of your parents, especially out of the kitchen. What you are going to need: a turkey baster or some kind of pipette if you have one. If not, just skip that one. You will need a spoon. You'll need a cup. You'll need a bowl full of water, as I have down here. You will need some oil, any kind of oil will work. I have here vegetable oil just because it's cheap. You'll need a tablespoon, and you'll need another cup, which is going to act as a receptacle for when we remove the oil and put it in here. Okay, so here we go. So that is what you're going to need first. You're also going to need tissues. I'm sorry if I didn't say that before. Highly recommend having some paper towels on hand, and even more recommended is taking a piece of plastic or a piece of aluminum foil. In my case, because this is what we have in abundance in my house, and you want to put this underneath all of your supplies. So the reason this is my least favorite lab of all time is because this one can get super messy. My first year teaching, I did this lab 5 times in one day because I was teaching middle school, and I had 5 classes. I spent 9 hours after school cleaning it up. So I always think of that memory and how sad I was every time I do this lab. So if you are doing this yourself, you're going to want to take 1 tablespoon of your oil. Remember, again, in my case, it's canola oil. You're going to measure 1 tablespoon, and you're going to put it into your water. So now I would actually and remember, this is oily. It's very hard to clean up. So we're just going to put it to the side. Make sure you put it on whatever you're using to keep your surface clean. So, cannot emphasize enough how messy this lab can get. So if you're doing this yourself, actually everybody pause for a second, where it says draw an image. What does your oil spill look like before your cleanup? Draw a picture. So if you did this at yourself at home, draw a picture of what it looks like for you. If you're doing this with me here, take a look at our oil. What is it looking like? So for me, it kind of looks like a giant bubble. And the first reaction I get from a lot of students at this point in the experiment is they don't think it's going to be that hard to remove, because I can very clearly see the oil and I can very clearly see the water around it. So it looks like it should be pretty easy to remove, especially when we have something like this, like a pipette. Okay, so if you are doing this at home or you're doing it with me, I want you to write. So everybody write, why doesn't oil mix with water? Oil doesn't mix with water because... So I'm going to explain it to you, and then I want you to write it in your own words. So my oil is not mixing with water because oil is called hydrophobic, meaning it does not mix with water. The reason for that is water dissolves a lot of stuff. It's called the universal solvent. So it will dissolve a lot of stuff in it, making solutions, which is something we've talked about before. It is... Oil, on the other hand, though, has a certain structure of its molecules that makes it unable to mix in with water. So water likes to kind of like a Lego stick itself together. However, it's like sticking a Lego with a rock when you put oil and water. They just don't have the the atomic structure to stick together. Okay, so moving on. Why doesn't the oil mix with water? Write that in your own words in the space below, whether you're doing this by yourself or whether you're doing this with me. Excuse me for 2 seconds while I get my dog out of the way. So the purpose of this lab is that you and your table group, you and yourself are going to manage a cleanup team of a recent oil spill. Clean up 100% of the oil and keep track of the costs. What do you predict some of the difficulties will be in cleaning up this mini oil spill? So write in the space below, what do you think the difficulties would be if we were doing this in class together, or if you are doing it on your own with this oil spill? Write that prediction in that space. Remember to use a complete sentence. So now it says, keep track of, this is a list of how much each of the items cost to use. Come with a plan as a team for your oil spill to use as little money as possible. So this is where, if you're doing it by yourself at home, this is where you do exactly what it says on that paper. You are going to predict for yourself how much of each of these you're going to use to get rid of this oil right here. Okay, so if you are using this at home, we are going to predict that we use 1 plastic spoon. So that's going to be 1,000. We don't have a cotton ball, so instead we're going to say that is a piece of paper towel. So we're going to use 1 piece of paper towel, so that's 15,000. So far total we've used 16,000. We are going to use the pipette 3 times, and we're going to use the plastic cup 2 times, and then we're going to see if we have any left over. So let me repeat that again. We're going to use the plastic spoon once if you're doing it with me. If you're not doing it with me, remember, you're coming up with your own plan and your own prediction. If you're working with me, I'm telling you what that prediction is going to be, because it'd be pretty hard for you to do it and test it on your own. So then you're going to add up the cost of those items. So we have 1 plastic spoon. We don't have any cotton balls, so we're using a paper towel. So 1 paper towel. We're going to use the pipette 3 times, the plastic cup 2 times, and the tissue at least 1 time. We're going to see how many tissues we need to get rid of 100% of the water and see if that gets rid of it. So let's move on. Okay. So if you're doing this at home and you're doing this with your own supplies, after you're done, you're going to answer these questions. Why was the oil spill so difficult to clean up? What was your strategy? Why are oil spills so expensive to clean up? Were you actually able to clean up all of the oil? How can you use less oil or pollute less? and why is it important to study oil spills. So if you're doing this on your own at home, you can stop watching this video, you can go do it yourself and answer those questions, and I will see you tomorrow. If you're doing this lab with me, we're going to see how this works together. All right, so that was my prediction of what might work. So we're going to start by using 1 spoon, and this is actually to represent a skimmer, which is one way of removing oil. This is why I have that second bucket, is so I can scoop it out and put anything I do take out in here. And I'm going to try to do this as best I can. So I did 1 scoop, very carefully, transferring it over here. So now you can see I got some, but I also got a little bit of water in there, which is an important thing to notice. There's still quite a bit of oil in here, so that didn't work quite so well. The second thing, I'm going to use a cotton ball, which I don't have a cotton ball. Limited resources. We're going to use a fabulous sheet of paper towel. Oops, I accidentally got 2. 1 sheet of paper towel, okay? And I am actually going to try to rip this paper up because I'm going to be using my engineerical skills, and I am going to try to dip this 1 piece in and use it as much as possible. So, and then I put it in here. So I'm actually just like on top of the oil. I'm really not going anywhere else with these smaller pieces. All right, so that was next piece. Next piece. And the last one. Okay, so now I want you to kind of look at and notice how our oil spill has changed. It's become a little bit less. It's definitely separated, but there's definitely still a huge chunk of oil right here. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my pipette, which for me is a turkey baster, which is basically just a giant cooking pipette. So let's see if I can use this. So 1, 2, and 3. All right, so that was 3. The next one is my plastic cup, which in my case is a glass cup. We said that we would use this, I believe, 2 times, so let's see if we can get it all out. 1 and 2. All right, and then I think I said I would use 2 tissues. So let's try this. 1 tissue, soaking up the oil. And 2 tissues. Do not use toilet paper for this. Toilet paper is in short supply. We want to respect that and make sure that we're not using resources that could be best used differently in this crisis. That's why we didn't use hydrogen peroxide for elephant toothpaste. So I want you to take a look. I actually did get rid of most of my 1 tablespoon of water, but I want you to notice there are still little specks of oil in this. And truthfully, I have done this experiment a lot of times. So 5 times my first year. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I've done this experiment at least 13 times, maybe more. And I have never seen a group get 100% of the water. This one time I had a group that actually emptied their entire container of water into their receptacle bowl, and they still had oil left over in their bucket. So it's actually a lot harder than you think. So make sure you answer these questions. Why is it so difficult to clean the oil up? It's because the oil doesn't mix with water. You can write about what you think the strategy was here, what strategy you would have used. Why are oil spills so expensive? It's so expensive because oil is hydrophobic. It doesn't mix with water. We were not actually able to clean up all the oil, and pretty much no one ever will be. Some ways that I'm trying to pollute less is by walking more, by using my car less, by wasting less food. And why is it important to study oil spills so we can prevent them in the future? Thank you so much for joining me, and have a wonderful